Hi, I'm Konrad Marshall, and from the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, welcome to Good Weekend Talks, a magazine for your ears featuring in-depth conversations with fascinating people from sport and politics, science and culture, business and beyond. Every week you can download new episodes in which top journalists from across our newsrooms talk to compelling people about the definitive stories of the day. In this episode, we talk to Hugh Allen. Allen, of course, is the executive chef of iconic three-hat restaurant Vue de Monde. I profiled him 2 years ago for the magazine when he shared his interesting origin story. Allen is the son of a nurse and a paediatrician, both terrible cooks, it must be said, and he was marked at high school as a bit of a teenage delinquent. Yet in food, he became a wunderkind. He only just turned 30, and yet already has enjoyed stints under chefs such as Neil Perry, Shannon Bennett, and the esteemed René Redzepi from Copenhagen institution Noma. He's been a popular guest judge on MasterChef, and last but not least, is opening his own restaurant later this year named Yiaga. The annual food issue of Good Weekend is on newsstands right now, so Allen felt like a brilliant fit for a chat about his life and career and what's new in the restaurant industry right now. So welcome, Hugh.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you again. I think we spoke a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You were having a great time. I just wanted to start off with something strange. I've got a photo to share with you. I'll describe it for listeners. I took it last week. I was chatting with Australian portrait artist Vincent Fantuzzo. It's a black and white sketch of you done by the artist and a gorgeous image, but you don't look too happy, mate. Why so glum?
I don't know.
What was that for?
So that was for, I'm not sure if he's public about the end goal for it because there's sort of deeper meaning behind sort of the series he's doing. But yeah, it's just, I've met him a few times and he's a really amazing artist, obviously. And when he asked to do a little drawing of me, of course, I was quite actually humbled by it. And yeah, but I actually... Have
you seen that before, or am I sharing it the first time?
I've seen like glimpses of it. I don't think I've seen it finished. But yeah, I do look a bit moody, don't I? Yeah.
We'll see how we go. It's he explained to me that it's sort of hopefully part of a book, and there'll be a bunch of other chefs involved. Matt Moran is his good friend, and then I think he's mates with all of them really. Shane Delia.
Yeah, he's I think Neil and a bunch. Yeah, so yeah,
very connected to food. Anyway, that was just a bit of an icebreaker. How did you find food? Can you let listeners in on that? Because I remember doing your story and expecting you to tell me, oh, I learned at my mother's hip I was never far from her apron, or there was like a nonna in your life that imbued this love of food. But really, you're like one of three brothers and your parents just needed to load you up with old El Paso kits. So how did you get into it?
I always loved sort of creative things. I think if I wasn't a chef, I'd want to be an architect or furniture maker or ceramicist or something like that. I've always liked the idea of craft and makers, even when I was a kid. So school, I enjoyed school. I enjoyed being at school. I had being with my friends, but yeah, I didn't really enjoy the classroom, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I wanted to do something, and I knew that's sort of almost a similar workplace to an office or to university. So I knew I didn't want to go down that route. And restaurants always just appealed to me. I always loved we didn't really go out to restaurants much at all, but when we did, if you could see into the kitchen, I always loved sort of those glimpses into the kitchen and the idea of taking sort of a raw product and turn it into something really special and cooking it to sort of work with the ingredient was always, I think, such a beautiful thing. And then, yeah,
it was quite obsessive at an early age, though, right? Like Ratatouille is the favourite movie.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds tacky, but honestly, Ratatouille was a big part of like I became obsessed with that movie, and I think I was like 11 or 12 when it came out, because I think it came out in like 2006 or 7 now. So I was like, maybe 10, 11 or 12 whenever it came out, and I was already into food and cooking. I loved watching Jamie Oliver on TV, and I just thought he was, a really cool guy, and then Ratatouille came out, and I just became obsessed with it. Like I honestly could watch that movie and say word for word before they said the word. Like that's how much I used to watch it. But yeah, I just loved kitchens. I loved the idea of it. I loved the concept of the creative element, the nourishing element,
mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's always just appealed to me. So when I did work experience at school, as you have to do in year 9 or 10, I did it at Rockpool, and they offered me an apprenticeship, and that was it.
I want to get to that in a second, but first I wanted to talk about that that juvenile delinquency. No, that's way too strong a word for it. But you did sort of explain how you weren't fully immersed in school. You enjoyed it, but you went to, so for Sydney listeners, you went to University High School, which is a pretty academic sort of public school close to the CBD, but you struggled a bit, or maybe didn't give it your all, and ended up in this, what was it, the Too Cool program? Yeah. What's the Too Cool program?
Yeah, I got out of it pretty quickly. It's, like school, I think for me, if I applied myself to something, I could always do quite well at something.
Yep. But
I just, it was also on me. Firstly, I really struggled to understand things at school. Like if you, like algebra or something like that, honestly, you could have just been going, blah, 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 blah. Like it just meant nothing to me. Like not one part of it I could understand. And I think because of my struggle to understand things, my reaction was to become a bit of a, just distraction. And like I was never rude. I was never a bully. Like I think I've always been like a, like even as a kid, like quite a gentle person. But I became, I just wasn't engaged in it. When I wasn't engaged, you become a distraction. And for me, it was just about getting through it versus actually like applying myself. And I knew I just didn't enjoy it. So in the sort of classroom element, I enjoyed school, and I actually have like huge respect for teachers and stuff, especially as I got older. But yeah, I think because of that lack of sort of applying myself, I ended up in this sort of program, which was called Too Cool, which is, I think honestly it's a good thing to schools to have. It's sort of taking kids that maybe aren't sort of applying themselves or having a bit of, seen as could be going down a wrong path, to, get people that, I think we had police and stuff come in and talk about like the effects of drug use and stuff. And I've never taken a drug in my life, like it's to this day, like it's just not something.
You weren't the kid coming to school with a knife.
Not at all. Yeah. Like, maybe I was a bit of distraction, but I've never been into any of that kind of stuff. So I think it was maybe a few sessions. I was like, I think I can't remember how I got out of it, but I think I spoke to someone. I was like, I don't know how I ended up in that, but so cooking was my sort of way out.
Well, tell us about that experience at Rockpool. You mentioned it was like a work experience thing, which usually ends after a week, but did you just instantly know like, oh, I'm sold, this is where I'm supposed to be?
Yeah, so I actually did front and back of house, just I think that's what they wanted me to do, and it was good. Like I got to understand sort of both sides of the restaurant, and obviously both are almost equally as important. And so, I just really, at the start, actually the first few days was I was a bit like, well, I don't know if I like, it was like, you go from school, you kind of loosely have to have some sort of structure, but then to a workplace where, you do have to suddenly like, you have strict structure, especially in restaurants, you have service, you have to be groomed, you have to be on time, you have to be following a certain protocol rules that the restaurant has, and how, whether it's in the front of house, how you top up water, or how you and as a kid, I was like, it's a bit, it was quite structured, and I was a bit like, I don't know if I want to be working something so strict and structured.
Sure.
Even though like now I'm like, that wasn't at all. I was a work experience kid, but after a few days and by the end of the week, I really sort of connected more with the team, and especially the chefs.
Yep.
And there was a chef there who actually went to my high school.
Okay.
He was probably 10 years older than me. So he also went to uni high, and we sort of connected. We had one or two teachers that we mutually knew, and he was one of the sous chefs at the time, and he was really keen to get me on as an apprentice. So he spoke to the management there, and they offered me apprenticeship at the end of it. So I finished the rest of the school year, and then January, whatever year it was, I don't even know. I was 16, so I started the apprenticeship.
It was a steep learning curve. I remember you telling me like somebody would say, go get a bunch of tarragon or something from the fridge, and you'd have to kind of Google it on your phone on the way there.
Yeah, literally. Like you really go into like such basic stuff now, and I think this is kind of before. I mean, phones were around. I don't know I can't remember how smartphones were, but like not now where you have like everything's social media. Like Instagram wasn't a thing, so it's like where people are just pumped with information and content and stuff like that now, where they might have more of an understanding. Like still, even though it wasn't that long ago, books and media was kind of how you learned stuff about, or shows like Jamie Oliver of how you knew what things were. And because my parents weren't, they worked. They were both really hard workers, and in hospitals, food wasn't like the key thing. It was more just fuel, and then to get us to our different sports or after school. So I didn't know what tarragon or chervil or any of the, like, besides like rosemary. I would have to be scrummaging through the fridges and trying to Google things when they asked me for something.
You eventually ended up at Vue de Monde, learning under Shannon Bennett, like starting out in the basement at first and then upstairs, and kind of performed exceptionally well. I actually just wanted to skip ahead from that to how did you get from there to Noma? And this is, as I said in the introduction, the famed Copenhagen institution that's won best restaurant in the world a record 5 times.
It was always a goal, I think, and I've always had I think I've always had like a goal of where I want to, I don't want to say like, I had a 5-year plan, but like I've always kind of seen like, okay, by that time I'd like to be able to do that. How am I going to get to that? And sort of just going down that route. And I knew I've always wanted to work in whatever field is the best, like at the best and the highest level of that field. I think it's the same if you're a soccer player. Of course, you wanted to end up playing for one of the big, I don't know anything about soccer, but Champions League or Premier League or one of the things. Or if you're a footy player, you want to play for, you want to play AFL. Like, so for me as a chef, like of course I wanted to work at the highest level, and obviously at that time, as you said, Noma's winning world's best restaurant multiple times, and they sort of had this like massive, crazy movement, which is still by far the most influential movement since the Mothers movement. So I just wanted to be part of that. I knew some chefs that had been there and worked there, and the whole thing sort of sounded just magic to me. And then so I finished my apprenticeship, and then the first thing I did was get a visa for a working holiday for Denmark. I didn't have the job yet, and then I just went. Me and a mate that I went to TAFE with, we went together, and I cold emailed the restaurant. I said just sort of, I'm in town, just would love to swing it by. I gave a bit of a worked here kind of thing, and did this, and I'd love to come just be able to hang out. Obviously, I know you're probably you're not hiring because it's Noma, but I'd love to hang out. And I think I'd like put a really exaggerated, detailed letter of why I should be able to come spend a few weeks there, kind of thing.
Staging, right?
Staging, but like most stages they do was at that time was multiple months. So that I didn't actually have. I don't think even I had the money to do multiple months that without solid income. So that was the plan. So then I did the couple of weeks. They said, yeah, sure. And when I was in a couple of weeks, I was really just up in the prep kitchen. I didn't really like see or do much, but I was like, how do I get noticed? Because I want to get a job here, but I was like, I can't see getting a job. And so I just kept like sort of pestering, and then they were doing the pop-up in Australia. So Noma Australia was happening, and that was, I think, in 2016, the very start of 2016 or end of 2015. And, so it's been a few weeks in Copenhagen at the end of the year, and then in January, so a few weeks after, they're going to do the pop-up in Australia. And so I was just like, oh, well, I'll be back in Australia.
Right.
I wasn't actually going to be back in Australia. I obviously just moved to Denmark. I had a lease. I had my working holiday visa.
And it was in Sydney, right? And you're
Sydney,
from Melbourne, so I'll be around.
Yeah, I was like, I'll be around. I didn't even specify that I want. Yeah, I think at that time I'd been to Sydney like once in my life. So then, I went to Sydney. I think I stayed at a hostel or something for the pop-up and did most of the pop-up. And then during that, I sort of obviously built more of a connection with the team. And then I was like, I really want a job here, guys. And then I moved back to Copenhagen. Still without a job there. And then like a week later, the chef messaged me on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it was, say, hey, we've got a position if you can get to Copenhagen. And I was like, yeah, I'll be there next week kind of thing. But really, I was already in Copenhagen. I was like 2 minutes from the restaurant. And that was it. And then it was amazing.
Awesome. So anyone who's watched The Bear would have seen glimpses of kind of the pressure involved in being in a high-end kitchen. You've spoken before about Redzepi and his passion for detail. I love this thing that you told. I think it was one of our food writer, Danny Valent, that he would apparently talk about the difference between ape and human genetics as being only 1.5%, but that 1.5% is like the difference between shitting in a forest and flying to the moon. What was he like at his best and his worst when it came to kind of enforcing that detail, making sure that everything was just on point?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say a bad thing about René, honestly. And like he is such a pioneer, and I honestly respect pioneers in the field so much. Like the level of commitment and detail and drive he's put into the industry, and I think it's something that should be really celebrated, and I think he deserves everything that he's gotten and all the sort of accolades and achievements and credibility. And yeah, it's it was an obsessive workplace, but everyone was on board. It was like we all wanted for the place to succeed. We all wanted to have the dishes at the highest quality level. We all wanted to make sure the guests really felt like this ultra special, like sort of it sounds wanky, but like this transformative experience. And that people left Noma thinking, I've never been in a restaurant like that. Like that was just a cut above, almost like a magical experience. And so we were all like heavily invested in that. So obviously it was it was a lot of hard work, and it was every day was a hustle. But he was like the coach. He was like the driving force. And there's a huge team behind everything. There's a creative team, there's a test kitchen, there's a fermentation team, there's the service kitchen, there's the interns. Like it was such a beast of an operation. But I think everyone was really, just so goal focused and really, 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 really wanted to make this place something like, that, the world's best. So yeah, I think there's few people that are true pioneers in that sense. And I think, yeah, he's just a sort of a remarkable chef, really.
So you had some great experiences there, and then you're handed the reins at Vue de Monde when you're 23?
Yeah, I was 23, just about to turn 24. So finished, I would like to stay longer, but yeah, finished. I was there for about three and a half years, but I also did the Noma Mexico pop-up, and obviously Australia, and Noma 1 and Noma 2.0. So it was a really, it was honestly amazing, perfect time to be there, because it was a big spread of things. And then, came back home just end of 2018, start 2019.
The current manager at the restaurant, or actually, is Hugo still the current?
Yeah, Hugo's still
there.
Yeah.
So I remember he said to me that like he was one of a few who just kind of openly doubted that you were up to it at the time. Not so much you, but you were too young for the job. How did you feel about it? Like imposter syndrome, or what was it like being like, okay, I'm gonna be in charge of this flagship restaurant?
Yeah, I don't think honestly Shannon knew how old I was, but obviously we knew each other from my apprenticeship, so we had that sort of I guess more personal connection. It was pretty full on. Again, the team is so amazing, and some of the guys that were there are still there. The management team, and I knew a lot of them from my apprenticeship. So, Hugo, for example, Chris is their chef. They've been there 10+ years, which is for hospitality is a very long time. So, yeah, Hugo was sort of said, which he's very open about. He called Shannon, was like, he's not the right person. He's too young, blah blah. Which is totally fair, and was really, it's a big position. It's a big restaurant. It's it's heavily judged, and there's a big team, and I'd never been a manager before. It's my first time I was ever. hadn't even been a sous chef before.
Right,
it was I'd gone from a chef de partie to running a team, and so it was a bit of a learning curve. I think at the start, I sort of just went with the flow, and then I didn't really. There was definitely things that I was probably now I'd be more mature about, and I definitely lacked some maturity. I think I was pretty mature for my age, but I definitely lacked experience and maturity as a leader for sure. But in terms of the creative, or just being a chef in general. I guess I was young and naive, so you could just do things. Like I didn't really think too much about that side of it. I just was doing things, and some of the stuff, I think that was pretty average, and some of the stuff I think that's pretty good for someone that is 23, 24, and I think over the last, I've been in now 6 years, and it's evolved, and I think gotten better, and I think we've made it a much better workplace, and I think we've got a really good culture, and I'm sort of proud of that sense. But it's definitely not not perfect, and I've just turned 30 like 3 weeks ago. So
happy birthday!
Thanks. So I guess I'm still a young leader in that sense, but yeah, I think it was tricky, and obviously a lot of people didn't want me to have the position, and some people left. But I think it's all, I've also got great relationships with everyone from that. So yeah.
The last time we spoke, Vue was about to undergo a big renovation. I'm sure that would have been nice to be able to kind of put some of your own stamp on this place, because when you take over a job like that, you're a little bit of a custodian, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like there's a
I still feel like a custodian of Vue, yeah, for sure. Like it's had multiple chefs, it's had multiple venues, it's had locations, which I think that's part of the reason it's been so, Vue de Monde turned 25 this year, in April. So for a restaurant that's 25 years old to still, be busy, still be relevant, still, be a place that, Melbournians and people want to come to, I think that's a really awesome thing.
Is that really tricky though, balancing your vision with someone else's, or with what the institution itself is? Because you could only adjust the dials
yeah,
so
exactly.
much, right?
You are in a box. For me that was always okay. Like I knew I'd always do something from scratch myself, and Vue de Monde's obviously like it's got the cheese trolley and the soup fillet and the champagne service, and it's always had it's always there's a number of dishes that are sort of become sort of Vue de Monde things, which guests that have come every year or a few times a year for 25 years, they expect and they want, and it's maybe you can't, if you go push things too much, you get a bit that's a bit maybe too confronting or a bit too weird for some people, and it's not it's not what they want. So you do have to sit a little bit in a lane at Vue, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just you get to put your mark on it, but you just have a framework which you sort of work into, which is sort of respecting that 25 years of history as well.
Yeah. I want to chat just really briefly about food media. There was this major spat in the city last year when Ben Shuri used his memoir to kind of call out critics, and it was an incredible section or chapter of the book, because he essentially said he just has no respect for any critics other than maybe one who I think was a Pulitzer Prize winner, like the greatest of all time kind of critic. How do you feel about food reviews and the whole process, and the way your work is judged, and that you have to kind of see that outcome publicly?
Yeah. I mean, it's a tricky thing. Like I think I've obviously read the book. There's things that I would agree with for sure. In terms of sort of experience and background, like there probably should be some level of deeper knowledge in terms of ingredients and cooking. And
you mean from certain critics, like they should
yeah,
have
like
more...
if someone's an art critic, you'd hope they studied art or art history or something.
Sure.
Like there would be some framework. But I also think that being judged for your work is everyone is. If you're an athlete, you go on, footy players are getting constantly trashed and judged for their performance. Artists, get trashed for their artworks. Theatre performers do a bad show, they get, like everyone's getting judged for their work. Like,
yeah.
And I think that's getting judged for your work is also keeps you, I think it helps avoid a little complacency.
Mm-hmm.
Me knowing that I'm going to get reviewed or even for the new restaurant that we're planning, knowing that there's going to be reviews, knowing that's going to be publicly criticized and reviewed, like that obviously makes me not want to be complacent with anything and be super hyper focused, because I don't want an embarrassing review about my work. You know, no one does. So yeah, I think there's a place for it, and as you know, as they often say, it's really about the readers, I guess, and it's about the public. Just like I think we go to, before we watch a movie, we all check on Rotten Tomatoes. You know what I mean? Like
Totally.
That's for us. That's the movies might not want that, but it's just a reference point for us to know if we want to invest our time to watch the movie or food. So it's definitely, I think there's not perfect. They get things wrong. There's things that I think could be a bit more thorough, a bit more detailed, but ultimately I honestly think most people have good intentions from the food side, from the writing side. I think people generally come at things from a good heart, and yeah, so it's obviously it'd be nice to have zero pressure whatsoever, and it's something that does give anxieties. I have anxieties about it, for sure, but yeah, I don't see it going away, and I don't think it's I totally understand why they exist, and yeah.
On a related note, our restaurant critic, Besha Rodell, just revealed her identity online today. I remember from spending a night at Vue sort of hanging around your staff that they keep kind of incredibly detailed notes on guests. I was really impressed with that, how they could look up a booking and see, oh, these people treated it like the place was a pub last time. This lady loves a Riesling, or these people love the restaurant tour. Did you identify food critics? Do you have photos of them at the back there?
No, we don't have photos up. We do occasionally, historically we do some more training, more with the host downstairs, just because we've got that's sort of the first point of contact. It's I think restaurants are pretty savvy. I
was just wondering if you knew what she looked like, or if her secret was completely kept or not.
I did know what she looked like. I think I saw the article today where I think she knew that as well, that some people did, some people didn't. The chefs are pretty savy.
Okay.
I won't say how we worked it out.
You're not going to give away the secrets,
no,
but you worked it out.
Yeah, but also chefs, restaurants, especially, there's a group of, everyone's pretty friendly with each other, I think, in general. And if someone, I think most restaurants, at least in my network, everyone wants each other to succeed. I honestly don't have any, hope or desire for anyone to get a bad review or to not. I
want to crush the competition.
No, 100% no. I think there's a lot of, it's actually creates a really negative thing when everyone's really trying to outdo each other and trying to tear each other down and hoping they get a bad thing said, or hoping they get, bad reviews. So I think chefs often work together and help each other. And if if a reviewer came in, we would often, people, whatever, another restaurant, I would often get a text saying, hey, had this person in, booked under this name, booked under this email.
Yeah.
That's pretty standard in restaurants. So I think, it's probably, again, I understand why she's done it. She's obviously got a book coming out, and also, it's nice to, I guess, to have change as well. When you have, change is good. It's like starting a new job or a new role or moving the country, or just change keeps you fresh, and I'm sure she's felt it's time for change. So.
One final topical one. There was this major blow up recently when one chef, Nagi Maheshi, of Recipe 10 Eats, accused Brooke Bellamy of plagiarism, of kind of copying a recipe, which Bellamy denied. Can you copyright a recipe? I mean, how do you straddle that line as a chef? Because you're always borrowing elements or methods or ingredients from previous dishes and adapting them, or are you not?
I don't know. There's I honestly don't know enough about it to probably comment directly on that.
Not on that case. No.
There's cases. Every chef, especially in sort of, I'd say, the top chefs have been ripped off. Sometimes pretty obviously, and generally, I think most chefs are whatever. We'll move on. We'll do something new. We'll do something better. I think it depends on what level it is. If it's, something that, a concept, an idea that's really precise, really you spent months on, I don't know, if the Banksia pods or the gum nuts, where it's like, a dish where I spent sort of months
really
working on, that's very specific. Yeah, and
signature,
if someone else started doing that kind of, flora in edible sense, like I would probably be like, oh, like I wouldn't say anything publicly or anything. It's just because I'm just not confrontational like that. But you'd be frustrated for sure. So it happens probably too much. I think with restaurants, like I always think about what's next, and with Yiaga, what's next. Like we've had a lot of movements in food, and I think true like knowledge is knowing what's like, no one knows what's next. You had Thomas Keller came in with, and he sort of revolutionized the way of working and how, professional kitchens should be structured, and he always talks about, it was really about drive as a chef and personal goals and a sense of urgency and really pioneered that sense. And then a Woolley and Fat Duck and then obviously the Nordics came in, and who would have thought, a little restaurant in Copenhagen and restaurants in Sweden, and would just create this crazy movement and create a style which is so prevalent still. So I think it's hard to see what's next, but I think that sort of pursuit of the next is really sort of a exciting thing, and I think something that we should all be doing. So,
and that's what you're on the verge of. When we met, you could only tell me kind of the faintest whispers about this new venture, and I think you were just sort of securing the venue, which is in Fitzroy Gardens in Melbourne. So Yiaga is bankrolled by the same backers as Vue, the Far East organisation.
It's a joint venture, so we've gone all in with it. So,
but this is sort of your first independent baby. Is that as frightening as it is exciting? Like, what are you feeling like right now, a few months out?
No, it's a dream for me, honestly. Like, ever since I've got back, I've been looking for a space. As I said, like Vue, it's so part of me. Obviously, during my apprenticeship, and it's a really important place for Melbourne. But yeah, I really always wanted to start my own legacy. My own place, something I could design from the ground up. And during COVID, it was the start of COVID, and I was just on my 5K radius walk, and I stumbled upon it, and it was derelict and empty, and then it was up for tender. So we just started that process there, and I think the biggest one was knowing when we got the space, that feeling was like, man, like here we go. And then, but that was honestly just the start. Like it's even right now, like it's just such a battle with everything, like from the building, from permits and everything. Or we've all seen grand designs. We all know how it goes. But it's for being a few months off. I'm super excited. Like I'm really, even though it hasn't opened, and I hope it gets well received. But I think it's going to be such a beautiful space. Like we've really made, put in so much effort into the design and the concept, and in a deeper way. So everything's made in Australia. All the even the tiles in the restaurant are made from clay from Australia, made in Melbourne. Custom thing. All the furniture's made in Australia with native timbers. Leather, we're using leather that's the same leather as Aramillion boots for the chairs and stuff like that. All the ceramics are made. We're making ceramics, which is from clay, which is they use it for the cricket pitch of the MCG. So
wow.
A really deep sense of like celebrating Australian makers and craft and materials, and because I feel like if we're a restaurant that's focusing on cooking obviously Australian food and ingredients, it makes sense for the restaurant also to follow that philosophy and mindset. So it's been obviously an expensive effort as well, making everything locally.
Not just Australia either, but Melbourne, right? Like
Melbourne's
your
the key
team
one.
Victoria.
Team Victoria, 100%. Yeah, big time. So there are definitely makers interstate as well. But Melbourne, there's some incredible workers and makers and craftspeople, and from not just Melbourne, Victoria. So yeah, I really hope it becomes part of Melbourne, and I'm so pumped for it.
How much can you or are you giving away about what it will be or what people can expect from it, like the sort of the ethos or the style, or are you open about it? I don't know.
That's not secret. Like I want it to be real, I guess, aspirational space. I want people to come for me, it's only 40 seats or so. It's quite small and there's no turns. It's only one seat in. It's going to be a tasting menu that's, really obviously focused around, Australia and this country and this beautiful place we're all lucky to live. So yeah, ingredients wise, obviously, working with some really cool things. I want products that no one else is using. So, that's been the last few months, really trying to source ingredients and products that no one uses, just to give guests like an experience that feels, new and feels very Yiaga, a sense. So, and that will evolve, as we are open and as we continue to work on things. I hope the restaurant really has a really strong identity and feels very Melbourne, very Australia, and very Yiaga. So,
what does that word mean, by the way?
I mean, seek and find. Yeah, we didn't actually name it, so yeah.
One last one, just a light one. Chefs work long, late hours and have access to incredibly rich food and drink. How do you stay fit and healthy?
I've actually, it's a big part. I think chefs are in general and hospitality people in general are really become, real into their fitness. So I play tennis with a bunch of chefs every week. We've got a little club which we all go and play, and it's half social, half playing. The quality of tennis is pretty low, but it's a good outside the kitchen way to connect and catch up. And then I try to go to the gym a few times a week as well, and I walk to work. So like, yeah, I try to stay pretty healthy and fit. I don't really drink, so yeah, I'm pretty boring, to be honest, when it comes to.
It's a good prescription for a healthy life. Thanks very much for joining us, Hugh. It was great to chat again.
No, I really appreciate it, and thanks for having me.
That was star chef Hugh Allen on the latest Good Weekend Talks. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate and comment wherever you get your podcasts, and keep tuning in for more compelling conversations. Coming soon, Good Weekend senior writer Melissa Fife talks about the scourge of forced marriage, in which people are married as a result of coercion, deception, incapacitation or threats. And she's joined on the show by a survivor of this largely hidden crime. Good Weekend Talks is brought to you by the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Proud newsrooms powered by subscriptions. To support independent journalism, search Subscribe Sydney Morning Herald or The Age. This episode of Good Weekend Talks is produced by Konrad Marshall and edited by Tim Mummery with technical assistance from Cormac Lally. Tammy Mills is our executive producer, Tom McKendrick is head of audio, and Greg Callahan is the acting editor of Good Weekend.